Welcome to today's live readings. My name is Jody Zarambi. Some of you may know me by my pen name, Jazzy Mitchell. I'm the publisher of Launchpoint Press, and I partnered with Desert Palm Press to bring these live events to you. Today I will be acting as the moderator for this session of author readings with four talented authors. Unfortunately, Ellen Hoil, who was scheduled to read today, is feeling unwell and will not be reading from Traumatic Love, but we promise to reschedule her soon. Today, or before I introduce the writers, I want to let you know that we welcome comments and questions from you while you're watching this video live. You can June 30th.
Well, I see myself, but I didn't hear anything that Jody said, so I don't know if I had an introduction. I'm Sandra de Helen. I'm a poet, I'm a playwright, I'm a novelist, and today I'm going to read from my latest collection of poetry. It's called Migraines and Their Remedies, and that's what we're going to do right now. So the first poem I'm going to read is called Bad Company. Every July, since 1999, I get company on the 1st of July. It stays all month. It sneaks out for a day or two here and there, but never has specific plans, so I have to stay at home, waiting on it, hand and foot, as it sits on my head, pounding, squeezing, sometimes poking me in the eye, kicking me in the gut, jabbing me in the side of my head. Migraine. Sure, it lives here year-round, but not every freaking day like it does each July. One June, for instance, migraine was here only 9 days, holding me hostage. January, it kept me down for 10. March, for 15. But so far this month, I've managed to free myself from its vice only a few days, and only one of them in the last 8. I can't even get out to buy groceries to feed the damn thing. It will have to order in. I hope it has its own credit card. This one is called Migraine Again. Twice in 1 week, after 3 weeks, without a single one. Sometimes they fall this way. Other times, they like to huddle around each other like kittens, suckling their mama. My brain, one giant belly of teats. Today's headache sent a scout, a foot soldier with a bayonet, to repeatedly stab my liver first, to make sure I awakened and rose from my warm bed, breakfasted, and planned my day before throwing everything at my head. Surprise attack. Yes, we got her, gentlemen. We are taking her down. Molten rivers sluice across my head as I fall back against my chair, my eyes unable to open again this gray afternoon, now that my forehead is in the grip of your tiny warriors, pulling at every tendon. I reach for my pills, unable to find them by sound, less able to read the labels than I could have if only I had surrendered when I heard the first bugle cry instead of bravely struggling to my writing desk to die while booting up. And here's a little migraine haiku. One more migraineur turns her face from the sunshine, prays for quiet spring. This is called the spiral staircase. Unending halls of darkness, filled with thumping and shrieking. All exits are barred. A staircase leads nowhere I wish to go. It spirals up to blinding light or down to unspeakable torture. I hear a thumping so loud it fills my ears and tries to bore itself through the center of my forehead. The shrill winds rush within my veins. In this castle for the dark nights of the realm, there is no escape. We fight the dragon, but we will never slay her. I throw myself against the wall like an espaliered pear tree, my head shrinking from the sharpened knives of the second day of migraine. Migraines might slow you down. People say, I can't believe how productive you are. I can't believe you get so much done even when you have migraines. How do you do it all? Where do you find the time? You know the adage, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I worked all my life at day jobs in order to have a pension to allow me to work full time at what I was already doing part time. Now I produce more than ever. The minute I began to write full time, turned my attention to my own work, my life became my own. Why would I shirk what I love? Migraines slow me down a lot. They haven't stopped me. And finally, the worst. The worst part of having a migraine is not the pain, not the light sensitivity, not the way everything sounds too loud. The worst part of having a migraine is not that you can't sleep or think or concentrate. It isn't that you can't read or watch television or listen to the radio or stand your neighbors. It isn't even that you don't feel like making your bed, getting dressed, having a shower. Nor is it that you wish your cat would get its own dinner, scoop its own box, do nothing but provide comfort. No. The worst thing about having a migraine is everyone has a cure, and they will share it with you, whether or not you want to hear it. So, this book is called Migraines and Their Remedies because every poem in here has an accompanying remedy for migraine. Thank you.
Oh, that was great, Sandra. Thank you so much for reading from your book that was just released at the end of June. So, congratulations for that. And again, in case anyone didn't hear the name of it, that's Migraines and Their Remedies. And I love that you use some humor with it and you kind of talk back at migraines and tell them you're not going to go unwillingly and just stop your life because of it. So, thank you so much for reading from that today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure thing. Next up, we're going to hear from Desert Palm Press author Rae Magdon. She'll be reading from The Blood Bride, which just came out August 1st. Hi, Rae.
Hi there. First of all, I would love all of you to take a peek at this gorgeous cover by my cover artist Rachel George. I'm so impressed with her every time she does a cover for one of my books. The Blood Bride is an arranged marriage fantasy romance between two elves. One is a noble, the queen of the kingdom of Winter Whale, and the other is just an elf from the woods who, because of her unusual blood, is a candidate for marriage to this ice queen in her snowy kingdom. I am reading from the second chapter. where Bryn the Wood Elf is standing at court before Queen Valis Aethbane, and she's standing with a line of other elven women who are also potential brides. And you'll just have to listen and see what happens. Stand here! Delia shoved Bryn toward the end of the line. The other women turned, examining Bryn as much as she'd examined them. Bryn's face burned. She relished the thought of looking a wild mess before, but it was mildly embarrassing to be judged by so many strangers. Surely she resembled a drowned rat more than a prospective bride. To avoid returning their stares, Bryn studied the rest of the room. 2 symmetrical stairways of glowing ice, dusted liberally with powdered snow, dominated the far wall. They curved up toward a shimmering throne of blue, with a stylized frozen waterfall in 3 tiers descending from its base. Upon the throne sat a slender figure whom Bryn couldn't see well from a distance. Is that Queen Aethbane? Of course it is. Who else would dare sit on the throne? She swallowed, then whispered to Delia out of the corner of her mouth. Should I bow or... When she approaches, Delia whispered, before making good her escape. Best of luck! She slipped away faster than anyone should be able to move. In another life, she could have been a master thief, except for the loud voice. Queen Aethbane rose from her throne, descending the left stairway with all the grace and poise one might expect of royalty. Bryn's heart hammered, leaping up into her throat. To her immense relief, the queen didn't approach her end of the line. She began on the other side, working left to right. Bryn tried to observe without being obvious, but forgot all subtlety as Queen Aethbane paused in front of the first candidate, who curtsied deeply. Queen Aethbane said something in a low voice Bryn couldn't hear, then drew a ruby-encrusted dagger from a scabbard strapped to her thigh. Sweat sprouted on the back of Bryn's neck. The slit in the queen's dress was much higher than she'd expected, and the pale blue thigh that peeked out was slender but toned. Don't stare at the queen's legs, idiot. Do you want to be thrown in the dungeon? She forgot all about ogling when Queen Aethbane sliced the dagger across the first candidate's hand. As soon as the thin trickle of blood touched its blade, the dagger flared red. Redder than a ripe apple fallen from its tree. Redder than holly berries. Red as the blood it had spilled. The queen murmured something, and the candidate curtsied again, taking a step back from the line. The process repeated with the next candidate, and the next, and the next. Bryn's confidence wavered as Queen Aethbane approached her end of the line. The longer the queen went without selecting another candidate, the more agitated she became. Bryn's heart pounded and her stomach twisted into a nervous knot. The dagger glowed each time, sometimes bright, sometimes dim, but always a vivid red. She doesn't seem to care who these women are or how they look. It's all about their blood. It was an unpleasant realization. If the queen only cared about blood, Bryn's attempts to be off-putting wouldn't work. She could only hope the dagger wouldn't react to the magic in her blood. Magic had always been her brother Darrow's domain, not hers. Soon, only one other candidate remained. As Queen Aethbane sliced her neighbor's hand, Bryn watched with intense curiosity. Instead of staring at the dagger, she found herself studying the queen. She was the same height as Bryn, in other words, average, but very slender. Her royal blue gown clung to her hips, flaring at the upper thigh. Lush white fur patterned with black spots lined the gown's hem, neckline, and sleeves. The neckline itself was low, showing off prominent collarbones and more than a hint of cleavage. Stop it! If staring at her leg was bad, staring at her tits will probably get you a death sentence. When Queen Aethbane turned, Bryn's mouth fell open. The queen's eyes were wide-set and pale gray, like the sky on a rainy day. Her nose was long and regal, her dark purple lips surprisingly full. She had what Isuna affectionately referred to as diamond cheekbones, as in sharp enough to cut. Oh no, Bryn thought. She's beautiful. This is awful. As Queen Aethbane glided to a stop in front of her, Bryn forgot how to breathe. She stared, stunned, until the queen tilted her head. Everything came rushing back in a flash of heat, unfreezing Bryn's body. She managed a clumsy curtsy, nearly tripping over her own boots. Thank the seasons. The only thing that could make this moment worse is planting my face in the queen's cleavage. Give me your hand, Queen Aethbane said in a soft, melodious voice. Bryn nodded dumbly and stuck out her hand. Queen Aethbane's fingers were cool as they wrapped around hers. There will be no pain. And as Queen Aethbane sliced the dagger across Bryn's palm, there wasn't any. Bryn watched her own blood seep from the wound and onto the blade. A flash of crimson light burst between them, burning Bryn's eyes. She threw up her other hand to shield her face, but the light burned through her closed lids as though she'd been staring directly into the midday sun. Bryn's heart dropped straight through her stomach and down to her snow-crusted boots. Apparently, tripping and falling onto the queen wasn't the worst possible outcome after all. And here we have a perspective shift for the last part of the chapter. This is Valis's perspective now. Her. She's the one, Aethbane said. Valis squinted as Aethbane's brilliant glow dimmed. She withdrew the dagger from the wood elf's hand, examining the blade. Aethbane had absorbed her blood, leaving the blade shiny and clean. Cautiously, Valis lifted her gaze to the candidate Aethbane had chosen. To her dismay, the wood elf wasn't much to look at. She had a handsome face, if such things mattered, but her overall appearance was dirty and disheveled, thanks to her damp traveling furs and the bird's nest of brown hair beneath her cap. I suppose none of that matters as long as her blood is strong enough for the ritual, she thought. Exactly, Aethbane whispered. We need the strongest magic possible in order to quell that which dwells beneath. This one possesses incredible power, although there is something different about the taste of her blood. Something that puzzles me. Valis's eyes widened. Aethbane had tasted more blood than she could fathom over the centuries. If this wood elf's blood impressed it, confused it. Tell me, Valis said, focusing on the scruffy wood elf. She too had opened her eyes, which were a rich, honeyed shade of amber. What is your name? The wood elf's mouth opened and closed like a stunned fish. Valis sighed and took the wood elf's hand, placing Aethbane flat over the cut. It healed instantly, but she kept the wood elf's hand in hers afterward, surprised by the noticeable calluses. They were somewhat familiar. An archer? Ah, that was it. Her sister Shalana had carried a bow for situations when blood magic wouldn't suffice. Upon being touched, the wood elf's face hardened. Her stare became visibly cold. Bryn Woodwarden, Your Majesty. Bryn Woodwarden. Valis tested the name, an average name for someone who was, despite appearances, extraordinary, at least according to Aethbane. She had no choice but to trust the dagger's judgment. In that case, Bryn Woodwarden, would you do me the honor of becoming my consort? Me? But Bryn gestured helplessly at the other candidates, who stared back at her with a mixture of envy and fascination. Aethbane has selected you. Valis had expected an immediate yes. Bryn's hesitation was becoming awkward, especially in front of all these people, some of whom were nobles in her own kingdom. You're letting a dagger choose who you'll marry? Bryn blurted out, with no small amount of disdain. As is tradition. Valis's jaw tightened. I will ask once more. Will you do me the honor of becoming my consort? Bryn fired back a question of her own. Will you send your best warriors and artificers to fight the rot infecting my home forest? She pinned Valis with a sharp, accusatory stare. Valis blinked, not merely due to Bryn's inappropriately demanding tone. Natix had suggested an offer of aid as a way to widen their pool of potential candidates beyond Winterwale's borders. She had agreed, though she doubted such incentive would be necessary. Apparently, she had been incorrect. It reassured her in a way. That meant their marriage would be a simple transaction. Better to marry someone with clear expectations rather than a scheming social climber who happened to possess powerful blood. Yes, she told Bryn. My advisor has already arranged it. You have my word as Queen of Winterwale. That didn't seem to reassure Bryn. She squared her shoulders and jutted out her chin, bristling with barely suppressed hostility. Her eyes burned like wood upon a blazing hearth, and Valis was taken aback by their spiteful heat. No, I can't do this. Coming here was a mistake. Bryn turned and left without another word. Her heavy boots squeaked across the floor as she rushed out of the throne room. She burst through the doors and out into the hallway, leaving the entire throne room in shocked silence. Valis stared as the doors swung shut. No? She could scarcely believe the rejection. She shoved Aethbane into its scabbard, uncomfortably aware of the other candidates' eyes on her. At least they weren't whispering among themselves. Yet. What would happen when the word of this reached her nobles? You must have made a mistake, Aethbane, she thought. How dare you pick the only woman in this kingdom or any other who would reject a marriage proposal from a queen? Is this your idea of a joke? No joke. Still, Aethbane's voice carried a hint of dry amusement. Her blood is perfect for ritual spellcasting. It's the strongest I've tasted in centuries. I've never been wrong before. Aethbane's tone stoked the flames of Valis's temper. Enough! I will not stand for this humiliation. Select another candidate or keep your silence. No other even comes close, Your Majesty, Aethbane said. The only way you will avoid humiliation is to convince this Bryn Woodwarden to marry you. So, how are you at courting, Your Majesty? Valis balled her hands. Delia! She snapped. Delia scurried over and made a deep curtsy. Yes, Your Majesty. From Delia's look of shock, she'd witnessed the entire spectacle from the sidelines. Find her. Valis brandished a finger at the double doors through which Bryn had escaped. Now. And if you liked it, the book is The Blood Bride by me, Rae D. Magdon. You can find it on Amazon, Smashwords, Apple Books, Barnes & Noble, basically anywhere you can buy ebooks. If you like arranged marriages and gay elves, you'll like it.
That was a great excerpt that you read for us today, Rae. It gives us a real flavor of the main characters, so thank you.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Yes. So last, we're going to hear from our special guest, Lynette Yetter. She's a 2023 PEN Award for Poetry and Translation finalist. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And so why don't you tell us what you're reading from and give us a little background on that.
Sure, I'm reading from Adela Zamudio, Selected Poetry and Prose. And Adela Zamudio is the most celebrated writer in Bolivia, in the heart of South America. And her birthday is a national holiday. And kind of like here in the States, when Martin Luther King's birthday is being celebrated and the media will excerpt, things from his I Have a Dream speech. In Bolivia, October 11th, it is her birthday, and all the newspapers talk about her and excerpt her most famous poem that criticizes patriarchy, and it's called Born a Man, which I'll be reading. And she lived from 1854 to 1928, which sounds like a long time ago, but reading her poems, it sounds like she's critiquing our situations in many cases today. In the preface, I write that I sense a relationship with Adela Zamudio as if she were still alive, and our poetic conversations have made her a part of me, as often happens in deep friendships. To me, her poems are fresh and current. In some poems, she reflects on inner emotional struggles using metaphors that reveal our oneness with Mother Nature. Other poems call for justice, critiquing with irony the hypocrisy, artificiality, and injustices endemic in Western industrialized society. In my translations, I seek to convey the truth that Zamudio writes from her compassionate, courageous heart and vast intellect. And I also write that Adrienne Rich would place Adela Zamudio firmly on the lesbian continuum because of her women-centered life. She's the mother of feminism in Bolivia, the mother of women's education, activist for women's rights and for indigenous people's rights. First, I'll read a poem that is her view of the role of the author in society, of the writer in society. It's just titled Fragment. In the midst of its black storms of mad desire or criminal passion, humanity guards hidden pearls at the bottom of the ocean of the heart. There, in the intimacy of one's conscience, where there's always more sorrow than evil, who doesn't harbor a generous instinct that tends to the truth? Fearless diver who has experienced the pounding waves of society, the writer, knows how to discover the soul's pearl hidden in the shell of suffering. She shows the world that precious jewel set in the gold of her creative genius, noble crown of the human temple, the ideals of truth and good. Just wanted to show you it's a bilingual, so it's Spanish on one side and English on the other, all the way through. And now for Born a Man, which isn't only her most famous poem in Bolivia, but also almost the only poem of hers that had been translated into English before I came along and translated a lot of her other work. Born a Man. It's her endless labor to correct the stupid klutziness of her husband. And in the house, surprise, surprise, he's inept and fatuous, but he's always the boss because he's a man. If she writes poems, oh, a man must have written them. People assume she just took dictation. Surprise, surprise. If that man is not the poet, why assume he was? Because he's a man. A wise and compassionate woman can't vote in elections, but the most narcissistic, sociopathic man can. Surprise, surprise. If he can just sign his name, even an idiot can vote because he's a man. When he's down on his luck, he gets depressed, drinks, gambles. She resists, struggles, and prays. Surprise, surprise. We call her the weaker sex and him the stronger sex because he's a man. If her husband commits adultery, she must forgive him, but he can seek revenge. Surprise, surprise. He can even murder his wife, his adulterous wife, because he's a man. Oh, privileged mortal, for being so perfect and so ethical. You enjoy lifelong renown. What did you do to deserve all of this? You were born a man. And on Adela's birthday, October 11th, coming up, if you're in Portland or vicinity, you're invited to her birthday party. It's going to be at Literary Arts. It's a Wednesday, October 11th at 6:30. And I will be reading Adela Zamudio and her poems in conversation with Audrey and Rich's poems read and discussed by Sarah Guest, followed by birthday cake. So maybe we'll see you there at Literary Arts. And I am so happy to be here today with these wonderful authors and Desert Palm Press and Launch Point Press. Thank you so much, Jody.
You're welcome, and thank you for being here with us today. That was wonderful. All of these readings were great and varied, and I think that we gave a great selection to those who are watching today. I also think we have time, so I'm going to ask some questions of you, because I'm sure those that are watching would love to know a bit more about you and the way you view life. So, but first I want to ask kind of a serious question here, and I'm going to revise it a little bit, but I think, you know, a lot of people, a lot of writers, they have day jobs or a side hustle or something else they do besides writing. You know, I guess a lot of writers, they fit into that tortured, poor artists, you know, that that many of us have, and we're in a niche too where it's still small and doesn't always cross over, and we don't make a lot of money. So tell me, do you have a side hustle or a day job, or did you when you were writing some of your other works? Tell me about that, and if so, how did that influence what you ended up writing? You know, did it give you some sort of expertise in some area that you could translate over to your works? So who wants to take a shot at that first? I can call on you.
I'll answer. I definitely am a writer full time right now. But when I started out, I was also a musician. I was gigging, doing weddings, teaching music to kids, lessons. Um, my degree is in flute performance. And years later, my love of music and all this knowledge came with my book Before the Blood Bride, Song of Stars, which is about two childhood best friends who become lovers at a fantasy music school. So that really influenced the creation of that book in a huge way, and also the main character's relationship with her teacher, not a romantic relationship, but more of a sort of twisted familial relationship. Um, it was sometimes hard to have boundaries with your music teachers when you were sent away to study, and they were like in charge of everything in your life. And it was, yeah, it's meant to be a mentor mentee relationship, but sometimes the boundaries can be blurred and crossed in terms of, the rest of your life when you're in a very intense teacher student relationship like that. So a lot of that I saw uh, made it into Song of Stars as well.
No,
And
that's
it was very
fascinating.
cathartic to write about.
Oh, I bet, yeah. I mean, you always say write what you know, and at least I've seen that in many of these books that some parts of the artist or the writer's life find their way into their books, even if you take a kernel of truth and then run away with it and make something
Definitely.
else. Well, that's great. That's really fascinating that you're a musician. And do you still keep up playing the flute and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I
No.
still play. It's not my day job anymore, but I still
Right.
play, yes.
Oh, excellent. Thanks for sharing with us. So, Lynette, you want to tell us about your answer
Yeah,
on this?
sure. And I've worked at over 100 different jobs over the years, including being a dishwasher in the restaurant where the machine was broken, and you just huddled over the sink scrubbing madly. Live-in
Right.
medical assistant for two different people at different times. Long-distance bus driver, teacher, a volunteer worker with Potters for Peace in the roadless mountains of Nicaragua, and an international fair trade entrepreneur CEO. And in all of these experiences informed my writing, and most specifically my first novel, which was Lucy Plays Panpipes for Peace. Uh, and so Lucy, the protagonist, was a California free spirit, Buddhist, and she had played flute where I had played flute, and the first time she heard the sound of the Andean panpipes, it resonated in her soul like a genetic memory, and that of what it's like to live in harmony with each other and the earth. And so she goes on a quest to find, and learn everything she can about this music, and to find or create that ideal society of which the panpipe sings. So after learning to play at a professional level, getting fluent in Spanish and studying Quechua, the language of the Inca, she goes to Peru and Bolivia, plays panpipes with indigenous people in ceremonies and festivals, chews the sacred coca leaf, and encounters U.S.-supported human rights abuses that lead to a life or death decision. And to support being there, she started exporting handcrafts and musical instruments that she wholesale distributed in the States, which I happened to be doing at that very moment, also as I was playing panpipes in Bolivia. And it started out as memoir, and I was advised to fictionalize it for privacy reasons for folks, and then also that opens the door for other characters who say, "Hey, I'm there," like Aunt Bert, who is Lucy's uh, 90-something-year-old lesbian aunt in Venice, California. And we taught her how to rebuild the carburetor on her car when she was 16, and just all kinds of things. So yeah, everything influences the writing, especially that. That's what's most obvious.
That's awesome. It sounds like you used a lot of your experiences to help you, and that you funneled some of those experiences into your works, which is really wonderful. And they're so exotic in a way too. I mean, it's really a world away from so many people that would read those works. So having that personal experience, you're able to translate them in a way that others could experience and enjoy. So that's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Sandra.
Yeah. So I've been retired for a while, but one of the places that I used to work was for an insurance company. So when I wrote my thriller, Till Darkness Comes, the murderer kills insurance executives gruesomely.
You have experience with
You
that? Just kidding.
know, there's just so many things that happens to people because of insurance
Yeah,
problems. It
yeah.
was just fun to blame it on somebody and just kill those people off. All, all
Well,
men too, by the way.
of course. Well, they always say don't make an enemy of a writer because you'll be the next one killed in the
That's
next book, right?
right.
Definitely. Wow, that's fun. Okay. So, and you know what? I mean, I've heard different stories of different people's day jobs and how they incorporate that in. Isn't it fun when you take the most outrageous things that might have occurred or that you've heard about in your profession, and then you just kind of slot it right in there?
Yeah.
It's really, gives someone their mind, it kind of goes like a little explosion, like whoa, and then it's like, could that actually have happened? And yeah, it could definitely. Well, thanks for that. Let me ask the three of you easier question, maybe not, who knows? But if you were a sandwich, what one would you be and why? Want to give a shot at it?
I will.
Okay.
Okay, if I were a sandwich, I'd be a toasted everything whole wheat bagel with whatever homemade schmear strikes my fancy that day. And that's because I'm down to earth and I embrace our interconnected oneness and I savor creativity.
Oh, wow. That's a good one. Thank you.
Now there's a debate of what's the definition of a sandwich. Do bagels count?
Right, right.
Wraps count.
Obviously.
Oh, I
I'd
guess.
probably be turkey, Gouda, and aioli.
Ooh.
That
Uh,
sounds good.
yeah, just because that's my regular order. It is what I like. I'm not more creative than that when it comes to sandwiches.
All right, is that a wrap or is on some particular
Usually
type
I
of
do a
bread?
wrap, but I don't know if that counts as a sandwich. I also have it as a sandwich. It depends on what I have.
Well, we can count it because we make the
And
rules here.
and it has to have onions, bell peppers, and spinach on it.
Oh, yes, you need all the works, right?
Maybe some
Awesome.
tomato.
Maybe. Depends on the day. If it tastes Gouda.
Oh,
I know, it's bad, wasn't it? I'll hang my head in shame. Sorry.
It was cheesy.
All right,
It
Sandra,
was
what would
cheesy.
you be? Moving right along from
Yeah,
that.
I got that.
Yeah, so my if I were a sandwich, I would be an Impossible Burger
Ooh.
Goodness.
because I'm a vegetarian.
Mhm.
I would be vegan, but I love cheese. So, and I like to have my Impossible Burger with cheese and lettuce, tomato,
Mm,
um, and pickles.
mhm.
I've I'm a dill pickle eater from way back when I was a kid. I used to get into the pickles and drink the juice.
wow.
Oh, my kids did that too. And then one day they just decided they no longer liked the juice. It was the weirdest thing.
Yeah, when I couldn't get into the juice, I just drank out of the vinegar bottle.
Yeah.
Whoa, interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
All
no
right.
wonder I had to go to the dentist so early.
No,
I didn't
you're a
have any
woman.
candy, but I had vinegar, so
You're a woman that knew what she wanted, so you just
yeah,
went after it,
that's
right?
right.
That's
A
right.
baby woman.
We all grow up someday, but
Yeah.
I keep telling my children not to be in a rush because adulthood can be harder. Right now, they
Nah, it
have their
sucks.
challenges, but
Stay a
yeah,
kid.
stay a kid. That's what I say to them. You don't have the responsibilities. But okay, I have one more question for all of you actually, and that is something I'm sure the people watching want to know, which is, what are you working on now? What's going on? Are you working on another work? On what kind of work is it? Is it poetry? Is it prose? Give me some information. Who wants to start? Right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm working on a romantic suspense thriller.
Ooh.
The working title is Natural Predator, and it's about the daughter of an infamous serial killer who went to jail when she was a girl. And decades later, someone is copying his MO. And
Mm.
a nosy true crime biographer comes along to figure out what's going on with that and interview his daughter, and she becomes the main suspect in the new murders, and she has to clear her name.
Mm.
So I think
Wow.
it's important for people to look for plots for mysteries and thrillers beyond having detectives be the heroes,
Yeah.
uh, because I think sapphic fiction in general kind of looks at law enforcement through these rose-colored glasses, and sometimes it's important to have non-law enforcement people be the heroes
Mm-hmm.
and kind of confront reality a little more. So that was one of my goals with this, and the other one was to write a lot of ethical BDSM scenes. So that's in there too.
Excellent.
Hmm.
And you said there's some romance in there also.
Oh yeah, definitely. Um, the sparks fly between the nosy true crime biographer and the daughter of the serial killer who's under suspicion. So
Ooh, it's like a forbidden love in some ways, with those ethical boundaries and.
it's definitely darker, and not necessarily because of ethical boundaries, but if that sounds interesting to you, keep an eye on my socials
Yep.
because Natural Predator is probably going to be the next thing I release.
Oh, nice. Well, thanks for letting us know. That's a great peek into what's coming up next for you. Sandra, how about you? What are you working on?
Well, after several years of languishing in the computer files, I brought it out. I'm working on the third in the series, my female Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson.
Oh.
So the first two are The Hounding and The Illustrious Client. This one is The Valley of Fear. And so we're back with Shirley and Mary. And I'm allowing, oh, and we're going to meet Moriarty in this book.
Ooh.
I'm
Okay.
allowing Shirley to have some emotional growth. She's, Sherlock Holmes never was allowed to have any.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty, just set, and in all the books he was the same. But this is in modern day, set in Portland, so I figure it's time for Sherlock Holmes to, grow a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And Mary fell in love with her girlfriend in the illustrious client. So now she and her girlfriend will get engaged and probably move in together. Might get married before the end of the book.
Nice. Well, looking forward to that.
Thanks.
And Lynette, what are you
Yeah.
working on?
Well, I've got 3 projects. The one that's closest to completion that'll be out first is feature film, and based on Lucy Plays Panpipes for Peace. It's chapter 1 and chapter 16 is the film, and so it'll be out in I was hoping in 2023, and it might make that goal. And it's called Panpipes for Peace, and I plan to put it on my YouTube channel for everyone to enjoy.
Oh,
And
that's great.
yeah, and my other 2 projects is a collection of short stories that are also memoir,
Mhm.
and the other is a collection of poetry. Um, and so those are the
Wow,
two.
that sounds great. And you're able to work on three things at once. I'm envious and a little jealous.
Oh, I kind of always done that. It's kind of like a lot of pots on the stove and one's on the back burner, and I haven't forgotten it. It may be a long time, but I know it's there. And every now and then give a little stir, and then it can move to the front when it's time.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Well, our time's just about up, but thank you for sharing your works with me today and with those who are watching, of course. I really hope those who are watching will check all of you out, check out your work since you did such a wonderful job, and keep an eye on what's coming up next for all of you. Our next live stream will be Thursday, October 19th, and I'll be interviewing two authors. We'll have more information on that on social media, or you could check it out at my website, launchpointpress.com, and of course, desertpalmpress.com. Also, take a look at. So, until then, thank you for watching and have a great day.